So we are live. I'm here with Aidan Lisney. How are you doing?
What's up? How are you?
I'm doing well. I just got through doing one interview. Now I'm happy to be talking to an old friend. You've been on a couple of times. I've still got another one or two of yours in the can that I need to edit at some point. But always nice to talk to you. And today it's a special pleasure. I get to actually see your face for the first time.
Am I not supposed to see yours?
You can't see me because my broadcasting software dominates my camera and will not share it with any other software, at least to the best of my understanding. So I've had a
Oh, that's
hard
cool.
time with that.
That's fine. I don't need to see you.
You'll see enough of me, believe me. You'll see enough of me with these if you watch it. If you watch your brother or Matthew
I
Murdoch or
do.
anyone.
I watch Matthew Murdoch. I watch my brother. I just started watching your other video too that you just released. Give me the highlights of that one quickly, dude.
Yeah, his brother-in-law, his sister's husband, is, I think, a fairly new addition to the family, and he's a Catholic. So Stephen
So
reached out to me, and he said, "Hey, I'd like to chat to you about Christianity in general, but also about Catholicism in particular, because he's new to Catholicism. He doesn't know much about it, and of course, being raised in the Bible Belt, Mississippi is in the Bible Belt, correct?"
sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't. I guess it's the Mason-Dixon line is what they would consider like the cutoff, right? I
I
don't
don't know.
know. You don't
I
know
don't know.
America. Why would you know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
But anyway, so he just grilled me with questions about Mary and the Pope and tradition and this sort of thing. And I retorted with my usual, where did you get your canon? Where did you get your Bible? And, you know, many things you believe are based on tradition too, blah, 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 blah.
He seemed, from what I saw, because I got about 20 minutes of it, he seemed to actually actively listen to you,
Hmm.
which was, you know,
Yeah.
really cool to see that because I don't actively listen to people.
Well, you put your mirror away. That's good. I appreciate that for the
Yeah,
interview.
I try.
Just kidding. But so what sorts of things have been on your mind? I always like to sort of dig into the Lisney brothers' minds. Is it one mind or do you have two separate minds?
It's funny you say that. I would probably be the codependent person that would say we have two minds, and he would probably be like, yeah, he's cool. Um, but because I usually call him up when I want advice on something, and then it's basically like having this large room, and then I expanded upon the room whenever I call Kieran because he can see things very similarly to how I see them, but then um, turn the perspective a little bit into a different direction that I wouldn't have taken myself naturally, but still feels very comfortable for me because it's there's like that gap being bridged by him and us, sharing a bedroom for 14, 15 years.
Hmm. Have you read each other's minds in a way that would impress anyone, an objective third party?
No, it just irritates people. It's because it's just like a whole bunch of inside jokes that are obnoxious and um,
Can you
it
stop
just
crinkling? What are you
exclusive.
crinkling? You're
Oh,
crinkling
I'm
something.
sorry, my cat's toy. I'm
Okay.
just like playing with that. No, it's just all obnoxious stuff. The most that we would ever do is, I don't know, sit in a restaurant together with a group of people, and then everybody around that little nucleus is just mildly irritated that we sat near one another.
Yeah.
So
Uh, I have two sisters. Well, I have three. One of them died at childbirth, but um, my parents adopted a child, not really to replace the one who passed away, but to sort of fill a void and in memory of the one who passed away. And then I have another sister, my eldest sister. I'm the little baby, but I'm very close with my blood sister. I'm close with both, but there's a sort of a psychic connection with my blood sister, and we spent all three of us spent a lot of time in close proximity growing up, and I have read my blood sister's mind at least once. And a close friend growing up, we've known each other since the age of less than 1 year old, and we're very close. I have also read his mind on one occasion. And
Now
so, yeah.
is that controlled or is that just
No,
gifted? Is that just like random where you just all of a sudden,
yeah,
is that your
spontaneous.
voice or is it his voice or their voice that you hear?
In the with the case of my sister, it was a simultaneous utterance of the exact same phrase, word for word, simultaneously in a very random and unpredictable phrase that came out of both of our mouths in the middle of a conversation,
Oh, that's cool.
which made no connection with anything in any context ever. The other one was even more impressive with my best friend growing up. When we were teenagers, he was at university and I was a dropout, and we were hanging out. I think we may have lived together. I'm not sure, but
You
we
might have
just
what?
we just did a little psychic game, like pick a number, between 1 and X, and I'll try to guess what it is. And I don't know why this came up, but he picked a number, and I just looked at him in his face, in his eye. One of his eyes got big in my field of vision, and within the iris of his eye was the number 3. And immediately I said 3. He said, "Yeah, how did you know?" And I said, "It was in your eye." So
Creepy.
pretty freaky.
That's so weird.
So people do have connections, really deep connections, especially I think if you are in early childhood, you're exposed to this person and maybe you're under some sort of stress. There are different stresses that children can undergo because of family situations or financial situations of the parent or whatever. The kids don't know what's going on, right? But they can often
Right.
sense the stress. And I think this brings out a sort of sensitivity in children. So if they're in close proximity, I think they can bond in a way that's spiritual. And it sounds very flaky, but I've experienced it firsthand.
No, it's there's definitely something there. There's definitely so I joke that it would be, it's irritating to other people. But I had a dream a couple weeks ago or maybe a month ago. And it was Kieran, Zach, and I, and we were in this grocery store, but it was like more like a house. And we were going through these rooms together with a shopping cart. And the rooms were made of cinder block and they were grimy, but they were completely empty. And I had the feeling that I should be scared of these rooms for one reason or another, because there was this like leftover, almost like evil feeling. And, but I didn't. I was kind of brazen about it. And I woke up from the dream and went to mass. It was a Sunday, and told my dad about it. And I realized, oh, that was, that was like a manifestation of the interior rooms, inside of me, and the gift that prayer has given me to be able to clean them out of all their junk. And obviously they're not by any means completely clear of all that baggage, but they're definitely, there's nothing physically in them anymore. And I thought it was also funny that internally I wanted to take Zach and Kieran along with me to see them.
Zach is your child?
No, Zach is my brother. Well, he's my other brother, or step brother, if you will.
Oh, the third brother. I keep
Yeah.
forgetting about him.
Yeah, yeah. He's a cool dude, man. I like him.
Yeah.
He's the more gentle of the three, and probably more brilliant in a lot of ways than Kieran.
My wife makes fun of me because I had this dream years ago about an unholy trinity. It was Dave, Dave, and Dave. There were 3 of me, and I had a whale of a time. Just interacting with the 2 other twins or triplets. And yeah, she thinks I'm very narcissistic and self-absorbed, and I guess I am. But I really enjoyed that dream.
I mean, that's what we do, though, isn't it? We make ourselves God.
Yep.
So that, yeah, it makes sense. I can see that. What'd you do in the dream, or are you not? Can you not discuss it?
It's more or less just when you meet a beautiful woman and you're just absorbed by the beauty, I'm not saying I'm beautiful, but that's sort of the thing. You're just fascinated with this creature. Like, wow, what is this person? You know, and it's
Totally.
me.
You get very poetic when you talk about your wife. I enjoy hearing about that. Have you always been able to speak in those terms?
Yeah, I mean, just a natural romantic. I love all people, and I love, I'm obviously romantically interested in women in general. I mean, I'm attracted by women. Not to say I don't see the beauty in men. I mean, I'm not like one of these macho guys who says, "Oh, I can't tell if that guy's good looking or not." I can tell. I can tell. I can tell you and your
I know.
brother are good looking.
I was gonna say you told me that we are good-looking people, and you're
I,
not lying when you say that.
I could
And
gi-
I'm
I could give you a number, but I'm not going to give you a number out of 10 because it would just
I'm a hard 6. Let's be real. But David, you are known for asking the hard-hitting questions. So I'm gonna ask you a hard-hitting question.
Sure.
Who's better looking, me or Kieran?
Uh, I.
Okay, all right.
What was your third brother's name again? There you go.
Zach. That's a good way. Defer it to
Zach.
Zach. Zach's the best
I'll
looking
go
out
for
of the three
Zach.
of us. Yeah.
I don't have a brother, but it would be fun to have that rivalry and that sort of playful roughhousing and all that sort of thing. It's not the same with two sisters, it's just not the same sort of energy. But it might also get a little bit tiring. It might get tiring always sort of keeping up that friendly banter, no?
Yeah, but it also gets physical too. You can't get too physical with your sisters because that just doesn't like fly after a certain age. Um, but Kieran and Zach are by far so they're just like so much stronger than me, right? And they don't work out at all. They're just so
Oh.
like, I'm probably the only one that's intentional with my body. But they're just like freak strong. And so every time we get together, there's always something going on where Kieran has to jump on somebody or Kieran throws something at somebody that he shouldn't, like one of the nephew.
Oh.
So the camaraderie between men is enjoyable and funny until Kieran throws a chunk of ice at an 8-year-old's head, you
Mm.
know. So, you enjoy your sisters because it's probably a much more peaceful Christmas.
There's a guy at work that's always playing with my bun
Hmm.
and on my hair, and he's always there's another guy at work. These are all Italians. Another guy loves whacking me in the stomach. Occasionally, he'll whack me in the balls, and
Men are so stupid.
and I don't enjoy being touched by anyone. Anyone ever. So it's like, don't touch me. But I
It's
don't
not
say
even.
anything. I just let them do it, and I just offer it up for the conversion of sinners and the relief of the holy souls in purgatory.
That's really big of you, man. Because I don't know if I could take that. I work with all women. There's two dudes that I work with, but one's a physician's assistant and the other is a surgeon. I know I'm lying. There's another surgeon there too. Um, so like it's not as low caliber. Nobody's punching each other in the sack. It doesn't. It just can't happen in that environment. So, but you work with computers, right?
Well, I'm in an office working on a computer, but it's a construction office, so it's all Italians and immigrants that are out on the field, and then they come in and they clomp me on the back or whack me in the gut or play with my hair, which I find a little bit
It's a little
strange, but
strange.
yeah.
Yeah, dude. So are Italian Catholics are Italian Canadians like Italian Americans? Are there a lot of
Yeah,
similarities?
I would imagine they're all the same. All Italians are the same.
It's good. It's
Yeah.
good stuff right there, man.
Mediterraneans, whether you're an Arab or Italian, Greek, they're they're warm-blooded people. They're very, how should I say, effusive. Like they express their emotions. They touch you, and they will get angry, and that's why I love them, because in my culture in Ontario, Canada, no one expresses themselves, and it just turns into cancer and hatred and self-hatred and hatred of their friends and family, and it's not, nothing gets expressed. So I much prefer the Mediterranean temperament, where people can get angry and they can express themselves.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of stories about Padre Pio yelling at people like small children. It's like he's like a famous saint. There's a 2-year-old that interrupted him during prayer, and he like rebuked him severely. And it's like,
Wow.
dude, it's a small child. That's horrible.
Mm.
But I guess it's just you know, the culture.
Did you enjoy Mother Angelica? She's Italian. She was Italian, or at least partly Italian.
I don't think I watched too much. She had the EWTN shows, right?
Yeah, she founded that whole empire, that whole network.
Oh, I didn't know she founded it. No, you know, I don't have too many connections to her. I'm really biased against holy women because like there's just something like especially the saints. So like um, uh, I don't know. I'm trying not to be mean about it, but I'm just like I don't know. Every time somebody talks about Saint Teresa of Lisieux, I get so bored. I'm like, okay, like I get it. She was really cool. So I intentionally make myself like evoke her or ask for her assistance with certain stuff, because I'm naturally deterred by it for some reason or another.
Go
I don't know.
for sister, not sister, but that was my piano teacher, Sister Joan of Arc. But go for Saint Joan of Arc.
Is she real? Was she a real?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Learn about her and learn about some of the more manly women who are saints, because that might help you.
I okay. And who are the more manly ones then?
Well, I mean, Mother Angelica is pretty manly, I think. I think she's a saint to be. A lot of the women were tough. Like, I mean, if I think about Old Testament women, they all seem very, you know, handsome, manly women to me. That's the way I think of Old Testament women.
And that's what we look for in a woman, is a handsome, manly woman.
That's what I like. That's my
Can
taste.
take-
To each his own.
Yeah, no, it's you know, the damsel in distress. It's boring. Um, yeah, I guess so. I mean, Saint Teresa of Avila is somebody that I look up to and I think is really cool. But again, there's just something. I think it's also in the artistic depictions of saints that things get really boring too and lost in translation. So, especially in depictions of Mother Mary, I don't like them because they're so bland and milky. And so you listen to anybody's description of her, and they're like, she was the most beautiful woman that I've ever seen. And I have no mental schema for that whatsoever. And then you go to an artist depiction of it, and they're so, they're all so similar and so bland, and it's, you know, it just doesn't do it any justice. And the more you see, it's just so oversaturated by these certain images. And so I think that treatment is kind of applied to a lot of the female saints out there, especially if you wear a habit and if you don't have any facial hair. There's not too many distinguishing facial features that can make you stand out as a woman. And so you know, I see them, and I you know, they all just look the same to me, except for Saint Mary of Egypt. She was, but I mean, again, she was depicted as wrinkled and naked, and she did not get a flattering portrayal by any means. So,
Someone in the live chat, I'll leave it to your imagination to imagine who, just said, "Aidan, you're lame."
that was Kieran.
Yeah,
That's good. Clever, Kieran. Very
got
clever.
it. And then he gave you a heart, so, or maybe he was responding his heart to my heart. But Saint Catherine of Siena, she was very tough and assertive, and not some sort of shrinking violet. She's another one. But I agree with you about the portraits or the portrayals of Our Lady. Often I'm cringing looking at these sculptures or paintings, and I know they're not doing her justice. And I've seen a couple that are very beautiful paintings in particular. The sculptures, I've seen a few that are very beautiful. Yes, it's true. But the same could be said of Jesus. I'm not often impressed by the portrayals of Jesus in fine art,
Yeah.
but there are some that are magnificent. And, I think it stands to reason that we are not given too much of a foretaste of the beauty of Christ and his saints here below, right?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It allows people to meet God where they're at because they can connect things with their childhood and with what they're familiar with. So maybe they're familiar with something that I'm not familiar with. Um, but it's kind of funny, and I don't know if Kieran deals with this ever. I guess in the Hesychast tradition, you don't use your imagination
Mm.
for most meditative or prayer practices.
Yeah.
But when I pray the Rosary, I try to picture Jesus as best as I possibly can. But when I was a kid, my dad had long hair and he had a big beard.
Mm.
And so I have this constant transfer of my
Mhm.
dad's face onto Jesus, and it's such an annoying
Association.
distraction because it's just like that's not Jesus. Everybody jokingly called him Jesus, but it's one of those things that I love the Shroud of Turin images. I love the artist renderings that drew over them. I guess like the still image rotoscope. I think those are some of the coolest depictions of Jesus,
Mm.
just because they're like very rugged, very manly. Um, but my dad looked really similar to that back in the day, and so it's my mind constantly wants to project my father onto Jesus.
What is the Mishmarah? Because Kieran's asking, where's Mishmarah?
I think he's asking about my cat, Marsha,
Oh.
but
Oh.
my cat's usually downstairs with me, but I don't know what
Okay.
else that would mean.
So, where do we segue from female saints that mildly annoy you, not in their person, but in their portrayal and in their pop culture, sort of the way they're misrepresented, possibly by some who gush maybe over the wrong parts and the wrong putting emphasis where it's not meant to be placed with respect to Saint Therese de Lisieux, for example, maybe missing some of the harder hitting teachings of that saint and maybe sugarcoating, much the same way that Saint Francis of Assisi is misrepresented and
Right,
saccharine portrayal. All the rough edges have been smoothed off over time, right?
right. Basically, saints are just these walking calluses, which is to me just it's so cool. They're just really tough human beings, and so um, I don't know the transition. Sorry, this is low caliber content. It's like this saint irritates me. It's like good job, Aidan. You're really high quality programming right here. Um,
No, it's good to
but
be honest.
I know, and you know what? It's always good because you sit there, and then sometimes you think these things, and then other people share these thoughts too, and then you don't get to talk about it. And especially when it comes to something that's in the realms of religion, it's like, am I allowed to say that I don't like this aspect of this, or this bothers me, or I can't stomach this piece? And yeah, I mean, the
Yeah.
answer is yes, totally, because I love Saint Teresa of Lisieux's approach to this as the soul as being a child. And so whenever I approach our Lord, I approach as a 2 or 3-year-old. And I stole that. I think that's just the coolest way to approach God, as if, I am little, I am nothing, and he's Papa, he's Dad, and he's gonna take care of everything, and all I have to do is just run to him, and all else will be provided for me.
Yeah. So another strong woman is Saint Faustina of the Divine Mercy.
Yeah, that's another one that's like painted a difficult color for me because I do like the Divine Mercy chaplet, and I've picked up that book a couple times, and I don't know, read like a couple hundred pages of it, and her, her language is like whenever the saints talk, there is this real disconnect, and Padre Pio has it too in his letters to his spiritual directors. It's just so far above me that it loses me at a certain point, and I feel lost. And it's this very romantic discussion about God that I'm not at yet, and perhaps I'm envious of. So I have a limited attention span towards it.
Yeah, I can sympathize. I have difficulty with Saint John of the Cross, and frankly with Saint Teresa of Avila. I have a little bit of a hard time with her just digesting because it's a little bit too highbrow for me. And I've said before in my podcast, Saint Pope John Paul II, I have a hard time reading his stuff just because I find it a little bit too academic and too contemporary. It just doesn't transport me the way some of the older saints, their writings just seem a little bit more romantic and crystallized in a timeless language that resonates with me. Whereas if I'm reading something that sounds like an academic paper, it just turns me off right away.
That's funny that you say that, because you read everything, don't you?
Well, I mean, I read a lot. I try to read different stuff, but I don't enjoy everything equally. And this is one of the interesting things about the saints, is that we have misconceptions about the saints. And so, like, I'm fanatically obsessed with Saint Augustine and Saint Francis de Sales, Saint John Vianney, a couple of
They're
different
both
saints.
such cool dudes, man. Saint John Vianney. I just read. Actually, it's in my bathroom right now. It's the best way to read a book. But my dad gave me the Cure DRs, or whatever it is, like his sayings. And you're not supposed to read the book straight through. You're supposed to meditate on it. But I broke all the rules and I just read it straight through. And I'm like, this dude was brilliant. He was so cool. And so is Saint Francis de Sales. They're just some brilliant guys. So I have some real work to do. I have to pick up some of their actual pieces of literature and spend time with it, because Saint Francis of de Sales did the Introduction to the Devout Life, right?
Yep.
And that's like a major piece of spiritual literature for lay people. I feel like I should have jumped into that a long time ago.
Yeah. Well, there's no rush. I mean, you'll get to it in this lifetime, or if not, you'll get to it hopefully in heaven, right? But I wanted to say something about the misconception of the saints, like the obsessive fanboy mentality that I have with some of the saints. I know that I'm probably mischaracterizing them in my mind. Like you said, you thought I had short, curly red hair before you actually saw a picture of me.
Yeah.
Not that that's like relevant to anything, but you do form impressions of people, and they're usually wrong in significant ways. And I just watched, I had Netflix for 1 month, and I watched a show called Love is Blind, where I watched part of it, and they don't get to see each other. They just, quote unquote, fall in love via text messages and stuff. Or no, not text messages. They can hear each other's voices. They talk through a glass wall. And, I'm sure they're picturing each other in their minds, and then they meet, and it's nothing like what they pictured. But you can still have that love. So I'm hoping that's the way it is with the saints, that even though I misjudge them, I mischaracterize them in many, many, many ways, some of those ways being important ways, there's still that kernel of truth, that connection, that I really am inspired by their love for God and their self-sacrifice. So what do you think about that?
I agree. I don't see there being any real issue there. Just that honest desire to understand who somebody is. All of the other stuff will just correct itself. But hearing about the last time we spoke, or maybe I'm just putting myself on whoever you were speaking to, but you were talking about how wrong we often are. And I found real freedom in that. You're like, we're literally wrong about like 99% of the things that we do in our life. And I'm like, oh yeah, and that's why silence is so important. Like shutting my mouth and listening to other human beings for, a little bit. Because it gives me a chance to at least not, reveal how wrong I am about everything. Mm-hmm. And so, with the saints who are already experiencing the beatific vision, I'm sure that they'll gift us some kernel of the truth, and by the time that we get to meet them, all the other stuff will be, rectified, fixed, and won't really make a difference.
There's that famous expression, to know me is to love me. I wouldn't apply that to myself. Well, yeah, I would apply that to myself too. The more you know me, the more you love me. I think it's true of every one of God's creatures. But it doesn't mean you want to follow their example, right? Like Satan is ontologically good, and we love him because God loves him, but we don't want to follow his example, his bad example, obviously. We might want to imitate his pre-fall beauty and his intellect and all those sorts of things. But to know me is to love me. This idea applies to the saints because they are examples that we should strive to imitate. And of course, Christ being the saint of saints, we are supposed to strive to imitate Christ, and to know Christ is to love him. And so we strive to get to know him through the scriptures, through tradition, through the church, and as Saint Teresa of Calcutta would say, through the poor and the suffering and the marginalized, right?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the promises of the Rosary is perfect knowledge of Jesus Christ. And so, like, does that mean experiential knowledge, or does that mean like knowledge, just you can read it from a book? Or does that mean like Saint Teresa, like, I guess experiential would fall into Saint Teresa's realm of seeing him through the poor? What do you think about that?
Well, what comes to mind is knowledge in the biblical sense, right? That marital intimacy, right? The consummation of our love. He is our spouse. And I've never quite understood, as a man in the church, a Catholic man, I know the priest is a vicar of Christ, and then the church is the bride of Christ. And if you're female and you take vows, religious vows, you become the bride of Christ. But as a lay male Catholic, am I also the spouse of Christ, or am I the vicar of Christ? I prefer to be the spouse of Christ, even though it sounds like some sort of same-sex attraction, right? But I prefer that role. I want to be loved by him. I want to give myself to him passively. I don't want to be the vicar of Christ. I don't feel up to the challenge. But maybe that's just my passive, psychological impediment. What do you say?
I would say that it's a passive love that would embody being espoused. So I would use the word bride too. I mean, the Bible constantly refers to God as him. And so obviously God acts and then we receive, or we can react, I guess, if we're just, bad at being a human, which I am. So I react all the time. But obviously God is an overarching masculine presence. And so whether or not we're male or female, when it comes to a relationship with God, we have a feminine receptivity towards him. And so I would say that's espousal in a bridal sense. I'm cool with that.
Yeah. This is public confession. I'm not shy to admit it, but I've always shunned responsibility. And there's a certain manliness about taking responsibility, being a leader, being the head of the family, these sorts of things. I've always shied away from that. And that's part of the reason probably I don't have children. My wife didn't want any, but I didn't insist. And I mean, can't force that sort of thing anyway. But, there's always been a neglect of responsibility and a fear, I guess, of taking responsibility. If I have two paths ahead of me, one of which is passive and I can avoid responsibility, the other one is a struggle and I have to take on responsibility, I'll always go with the passive one that evades responsibility. So just more of a psychological confession here, but I wanted to bounce it off you and sort of get your thoughts on that.
Well, Kieran said it in the interview that they had with him a couple of days ago, that the Lisney men are all kind of like in that camp of, I guess he didn't actually state it was masculine or feminine, but I would say that we have a kind of more feminine way about us. And so we can be passionate and angry, but we're also very sensitive human beings. And so, as a result, I'm probably more like you, where I would rather not have conflict and I'd rather not like have to step up and do things. And there are certain times when I do have to do that, and I fail miserably.
Mm.
And then there are other times when I just avoid it and fail even harder. So life is hard. Life sucks at times. As soon as you said that you were in that camp, I was just thinking you should just buy a gun. That'll turn you into a man.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I take consolation in the fact that God loves me as I am, and it's, baby steps all the way for me in
Right.
terms of shouldering just a little bit more responsibility as time goes on. But yeah, I certainly don't beat myself up about it. But we each have our strengths and weaknesses, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. I mean, it's so cheesy, but just make the next right choice,
Yeah.
basically. And that's all that you can really do. I get bummed out. My wife is in charge of the banking, and I don't know why I've like arbitrarily assigned that as like a masculine trait. Like, gotta, like you better know your finances. But my wife's the one that's like, we don't have money to do that, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, I gotcha. And it's like, Aidan, maybe you should be more like participatory in this because that's a big deal. And then I'm like, yeah, or I could just avoid the problem and hope that it goes away.
Oh, my testosterone's like soaring through the roof here. I feel so manly now talking to you.
You should, my friend. 'Cause I might have facial hair and wear plaid, but I'm a terrified little child when it comes down to it.
How old are you again?
29.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm 49, so I got 20 years of more. I should really be a lot further along the path to manhood than I am. I consider myself to have become a man. I left adolescence at age 39, so you're well ahead of me.
We'll see. Yeah, I run from a lot of things. Dude, I get afraid to answer my voicemail. I'm like, I hear my phone ring and I'm like, somebody's dead. Better ignore my phone. And it's like, Aidan, that's a terrible instinct. Stop that. That's like, it's fine. It's probably just a bill collector.
So you told me that you're of English descent. Do you have any Irish and Scottish in there or no?
Yeah, we're super Irish too, actually. So my grandmother's dad was from Ireland, and so when he married her mom, it was scandalous because it was an Irish English marriage. So that was a big deal back in the day. But he died actually when he was 29 years old. So, but we have pretty extensive Irish heritage because of her family.
The reason I'm asking you, well, I mean, it's nice to know anyway, but one of my characteristics is that I'm very, very passive and peaceful and avoid confrontation, avoid responsibility and everything like that until I'm in confrontation mode. And then I love fighting. I love arguing. I love rising up and having that sort of indomitable spirit, however you pronounce that, where the Scottish and Irish pride comes out and I'm able to stand my ground on principle. And it's always based on principle. When it comes to non-principle based confrontations, I could care less, right? I'll just cave. And then when there's a principle on the line, then that fiery side comes out. And I've been in circumstances where people thought they knew me and they thought I was a doormat and a pushover until a principle was on the line. And then suddenly they saw a lot of fire. Is that the case with you because you have a similar heritage to me?
It doesn't work in the same manner. So like you and I have different things that would probably trigger us. Yours would be a principle and mine would be like somebody says something personal.
Loyalty.
So like yeah, so like there like I have a tipping point with certain things. And being once really overweight, I have this natural capacity to look at people and like find a weakness and then just go for the weakness as hard as possible. And so because of that, you know, like, look at their gait. Their dad abused them when they were a child. Like that, I
Mm,
have to constantly reject that instinct. So it has to be really, it has to be massively offensive for me to respond to something now, or somebody has to draw a conclusion illogically, and it has to be dangerous. So like if somebody like gets from point A to point Z and they do it in a way that I feel could later on down the road lead to something dangerous, then I'm gonna speak up and say something, because it's just so irritating. It's
mm.
I don't know why. I'm not an overly analytical, complex person, but like when I see things that don't add up and people are just more than okay with that, it really bugs me.
Hmm. Are you able to give one example, a colorful example that won't get you into trouble?
Nope. that
Sounds
that
good. Sounds
that
juicy.
No, no, because I'm still like battling with things. So like when you work in an office, there are certain things that are off limits. Like any kind of confrontation is off limits. But right now, I'm dealing with so that we have some coworkers that like to use the Lord's name in vain, and they're so aggressive, and it's such a pervasive issue. And it's one of those issues where I don't want to make somebody feel stupid um, for using a blasphemy, because it just doesn't mean the same thing to them. And not only that, but I don't think that's what Jesus would do. He wouldn't have made somebody feel dumb for doing something. Perhaps if they were pharisaical, different story. But like, I don't want to like get off on making somebody feel bad about themselves. But it often makes me wonder why, uh, our Lord's name is used in vain, but no other God is ever taken in vain. That we live in such a politically correct nation. So like, but you can hear Jesus all the time in the workplace, and nobody would say anything. Nobody would think twice about it. But you would never hear Muhammad. You would never hear Buddha. You would never hear Krishna. You would just not hear it. So I want to know why we're so targeted. To me, in my mind, there's no good reasoning for it, that's still allowed at in such a pervasive manner to occur.
Mm. Yeah, it happens at my work too. I'm not going to name any names, obviously, but I tend not to get riled up about that. I like hearing the name of Jesus in any context, as long as the name Jesus is preached, whether rightly or wrongly, truly or falsely. But I pray for I pray for the conversion of those who don't understand who and what Jesus is. And obviously, it does wound me, but it wounds me not so much because this person is ignorant, but because I am ignorant, and I was so ignorant during most of my life, and that I've blasphemed so much. It's sort of like a reminder, a mirror back to me of my own blasphemies that are so numerous in the past, and even today, I don't think I'm revering the name of the Lord as I should, or revering the Sabbath as I should, or doing anything as I should. So it's sort of a reminder. The shortcomings of others are a mirror back to me. I'm sure you do the same thing.
I try. I try to be as gracious as I possibly can, because I've been incredibly blasphemous in the past. But my anger doesn't even necessarily rise from the fact that they're using the Lord's name in vain. I mean, there is anger about that, but it's just the fact that it's an exclusive thing. And so we live in a culture that tells you that certain things are just outright off limits, and there's no budging on it. And certain things that I don't agree with. And so I often wonder. I know the reasons why.
Yeah.
I just think it's incredibly hypocritical that like everybody's okay, um, with one majorly offensive thing that just keeps occurring, but then everything else is like, whoa, 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 we're a little more open minded here about that, pal. You
Mm.
can get out, So
Yeah.
it's
Well, I mean, it's the same thing with the black mass with the Satanists. Why is it a Catholic mass that they're mocking? It's because it's the Catholic Church that's the one true church, and Satan knows
yeah.
it. I'm wondering if you're culturally familiar with Quebec culture, and in particular the blasphemous cursing and swearing of the Quebec culture. Do you know some of the curse words in French, Quebec French?
I do not know.
Okay, I'll give you the English translation. Some of the worst
Sure.
swear words in Quebec are tabernacle, the host,
Really?
the host, of
Okay.
course, Jesus Christ, um, and the chalice.
Whoa.
So if you were to come to Quebec and you were to say in French, the chalice of the host of the tabernacle,
Hmm.
you'd turn a lot of heads because that is like the worst, most aggressive swearing that you could possibly do. But people do, throw these words around. As you and I would, like, if we stub our toe and we say the word for excrement, they would stub their toe and say the word for the host or the chalice or the tabernacle.
So do you not have French masses in Quebec then? Is that
Yeah,
not
yeah,
like a
we
thing?
do.
Yeah.
But there was a revolution in Quebec called the Quiet Revolution, where what was viewed as a politically corrupt and domineering and rigid conservative Catholic Church was sticking its nose into everyone's business, particularly in the bedroom, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
And they collectively said, screw you to the church. And so the church is emptied out. Now they're condominiums, they're gyms. If you want to get a really expensive gym membership, go to the gym that used to be a Catholic church. It's beautiful, stained glass, the whole thing. But there are still faithful Catholics who do go to mass every week or even during the week. But the numbers are down to about, I would estimate, 5 or 10% of what the numbers used to be.
Wow. That's crazy. And how long ago did that occur?
It was it started in the 50s and late 50s, early 60s. And
I had no idea. So is there like a general era of anti-Catholicism in Canada?
yeah. It's strong. It's a very Canada's a very liberal place, first of all. So when you have liberal politics that pushes for abortion and for sexual liberty and same-sex marriage and legal marijuana and everything that we have up here, this all flies in the faith of traditional Christian morals, right?
Sounds like America. Sounds sounds like
Yeah.
all the stuff that we have going on.
I think you're probably a little bit more balanced in terms of having a strong opposition to the left down there. We're pretty much dominated by the left up here. The right, not that I'm a fan of the right, but the right
Hmm.
is considered a joke up here, a real joke.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it is more balanced here, but like, if you were to have a dinner conversation and you were to hear the word Trump passed around, it's always going to be in some kind of mocking manner. It's never like, it's not popular to be conservative here. So most people look at me and Rachel and they think that we're liberal people because we're, crusty hippies, and but we're very, very conservative people, and we both love Donald Trump. What up? I'll say that. I'll say that out loud. I don't love him. I just vote for him because I just can't, in good conscience, vote for anybody else. Um, but if we were to talk about that, if we were to go to work and say I voted for Donald Trump, we would alienate ourselves from everybody there, most likely.
Have you got the hat though? I want to see the red hat. Larry David wore the
Dude,
hat.
did he? They would think I was doing it ironically. Look at me. Like I would be able to get away with that. But no, I have not gotten the hat.
Oh,
I know.
yeah. The reason I love and like Donald Trump is because God made him and Christ died for him, but also because he has done more for the pro-life movement than any other president, I think.
And my uncle Mike, excuse me, my uncle Mark, just sent us something regarding that. He says that's the sole reason why I would vote for him, because of the pro-life
Yeah,
movement, and I think that's excellent. I think that's really good stuff.
yeah. And I've had a lot of prophetic dreams about Trump where
Did you really?
where he is very misunderstood, which I think is true. He is cocooning in bed in all my dreams. He's always cocooning in lots of big blankets.
Hmm.
And he's at a party. It's an all night party. Everyone's having fun. There's chaos. There's confusion. It's a good party. It's a fun party. But he's just saving his energy. He's cocooning. He's protecting himself. He knows he's not understood. He knows he has a lot of work to do in the morning. And he's like a hero for me, a very touching hero for me in all of these prophetic dreams. Do I put a lot of stock in these dreams? No, I don't. But I think they reveal at the very least that I root for the underdog. I root for even a narcissistic, egomaniac, deluded, sexual pervert underdog. I will root for the underdog, and I think God can use him. And I think God is using him.
You just gobsmacked him. That was. No,
I would say
excellent.
the same of myself, though. I would say the same of myself.
Yeah, yeah.
I would make a much worse president of the United States than Donald Trump. Much worse.
I would
Whereas
say it
I
about
think
Kieran.
those who oppose Donald Trump don't realize that they too would make a much worse president of the United States than Donald Trump. They don't realize it, but I think it's true.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to what you were saying about being wrong 99% of the time. And it's like, oh, yeah, being in school and getting things wrong all the time. Oh, my goodness, it happens. It happens so much. And the mistakes kill people. And so, like going back to that, like we are wrong so often. We are wrong so often. It's like, it's good to keep that in mind because, and exams and simulations, I'm responsible for other human beings. And then when I get something wrong, I immediately think, oh, great, what if I did that for real? And that's a terrifying concept to me.
Sounds like you're being humbled a lot, which is always a good thing.
School sucks. It's really, it's really tough. It's very humbling. This semester is the worst semester of the 4 for this program. And a lot of people failed it already. And I was studying before I called in, and it's a lot of content that we cover and a lot of very specific information and confusing questions on our exams that don't necessarily test knowledge of content always. And it's a lot. It's a lot of stuff.
When does that all come to an end?
May 4th or 5th is my final exam for this month. Yeah, or for this semester, that is.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And then how many more semesters?
I'll be a nurse once I finish in May. And then I'll go back and I'll get another degree. I'll get a more advanced degree in nursing, but I don't know where I'm going to take that yet. We'll see what I want to do, where I end up.
Matthew Murdoch says hi. He's in the live chat. You want to say hello? Give a shout out?
Yes. Yeah. Hey, Matt Murdoch, answer more of my text messages. I text him real garbage stuff. I sent him a meme of Jake Johnson getting his beard rubbed the other day, and no response, nothing at all.
He's still processing that one.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. He has how many children? 2, 3? 3. Yeah,
3 that I know of.
He's got no time for that. That's a quick look and like ugh, and then throw the phone away because. So. A lot of stuff going on. I feel like the Matt Murdoch, David CVS dynamic is a big part of your show now, because it's like one of those like episode arcs where there's a lot of drama that goes on. You got any updates, any new feelings, anything else that's transpired since the last conversation?
Matthew says, I didn't know how to respond. Well, the thing with Matthew is he likes to keep it real, and we like to...
I would agree.
We like to push off each other a little bit. I'm quite hard on non-Catholic Christians about authority, and he's tasted that from me a couple times. it's always out of love, but I push back pretty hard because I just want to know, if you think you have authority outside of the Catholic Church, I don't have a problem with that. Just show me where that church is. Just show me where the church is. If I belong to a
Yeah.
false church, just show me where the church is, and I'll be happy with that. But if you don't have a church, why would you try to drag me? Not saying that anyone's trying to drag me out of the Catholic Church, but I'm convinced
Right.
I belong to the church that Christ built. So I don't have any problem with someone else coming along and saying, well, look, your church is a false church. Here's the true church. Come and join us. I have no problem with that. I'm open to that. But I've never, ever, ever encountered any non-Catholic Christian who said, yes, I can show you where the church is, and it's the true church and your church is a false church. All they say is, well, I don't know where the church is, but it's not the Catholic Church. But so I'm a
And
bit of a hard ass with that.
you don't think that's a like a logical line of thinking then, like, I don't know where the truth is, but this doesn't seem right to me. Like, that's like, because that it's a gut feeling. And I get it. I get where you're coming from, obviously, because we're sitting in the same boat. But like, currently, I'm in a place where if I have a question about doctrine, I don't worry about it anymore. And I just kind of sit back and I'm like, you know what? I just need to focus on my prayer life. And if I get a good answer for this, I'll get a good answer for this. And if I don't, then God will be good to me in the future, and He's going to let me know that there's an error here, and I won't sit in this, for
Can
too
you give
long.
an example of that? Sounds interesting.
So like, I know we're going to talk about this, and I hate talking indulgences, but because it's just so like, it's so boring. It's the same reason why I hate Calvinism. It's just like a whole bunch of dudes wearing suits where they're just like, quantifying things about God. And it's just like, it just takes everything beautiful and mystical about God out of the equation. But that being said, indulgences and the quantification of grace, that's one of those things where, um, I see it and I think, I don't really understand why we would need to assign like some kind of value to a prayer other than this has, all prayer has value in God's eyes, to like, somehow pare down at judgment that we have accrued against us. Not judgment, obviously. It's
Punishment due to sin.
punishment due to sin. And because there's no way, like, so for me, for it to be beneficial, I should probably know how much of that I have against me for me to be able to start buying it back with certain things. And so that's one of those things where it's like, yeah, but if this is supposed to help us, shouldn't we also have the baseline where we know where we're at? Like, God says, okay, by the way, you're here, and it takes this many, acts of reparation to be back at like a place where you're satisfied. So, that.
Well, I mean, I think with the fall and original sin, we are reaping the punishments for our disobedience in Adam, in our first parents. And part of that is the obscurity of faith. The obscurity of faith. The faith is good. The obscurity is evil. Right.
Right.
We're bearing the evil fruit of our first parents' rebellion against God. And part of that is we don't know where we're at. I don't know where I'm at. I don't know. I have no clue how close I am to having dealt with all of the temporal punishment due to my past sins, which have been forgiven in the sacrament of reconciliation. But
Right.
those temporal punishments, have I still got mountains and mountains and mountains of indulgences that I need to clear that out, and then I can start applying it to my family, friends, enemies, and acquaintances, and those holy souls in purgatory? Or am I already, clear, to use a phrase from Scientology? I'm clear, and all the indulgences are going to family, friends, enemies, and acquaintances, and the holy souls in purgatory. I mean, I don't know. I have no clue. I would guess that I have mountains of temporal punishment due to me still.
Right. No, that's a good way to approach it. It doesn't bother me enough to the point where, like, I don't dwell on it, and I can't dwell on it, because if I do, then I get into this non-productive area where I'm just like sitting in this cyclical realm of thought that doesn't do me any good spiritually. And and so that's probably the best approach is, well, I don't know if it's helping me or if it's helping those around me, but it's going to help somebody.
Yeah.
Um,
I like to think of it always in terms of relationship, as you know well by now. And so, to use the analogy of your love life, with your wife, or me with my wife, if you were fighting and you're irritated by some of her habits, annoying habits, or vice versa, and someone counseled you and said, "Well, look, there's this thing called patience. There's this virtue called patience, and there's forgiveness, and you can cultivate this, and it's good for you, and it will make you feel better, and it'll make your wife feel better, and make any kids you have a more pleasant home, and this sort of thing." You could turn that into some sort of checklist indulgence type mathematical formula, but
that's true.
you'd be missing the point of the advice, which is cultivate the virtues, uh, cooperate with the graces that are already available to you, take advantage of the wisdom of those who have gone before you, your parents, your grandparents, whoever, or those in the history books that have good counsel for you, and everything will improve for you and your loved ones. That's how I see the indulgences. I don't see it as a mathematical, mechanical thing.
I see it as danger for me because of my scrupulousness and my tendency to err towards over scrutiny of certain things.
Yeah.
And so, and I know God doesn't fault me for like not reading the book of indulgences, but I was talking to my priest a couple weeks ago, and he was telling me in the parking lot after mass that certain legalistic elements of our doctrine have saved the church and preserved the church in certain in moments. He's like, yeah, but like I know that certain things seem arbitrary, but they have helped us throughout the years, and they've preserved the church and kept it where it's at. And he's like, and sometimes you need those black and white. This is like this, and this is like that, and that was the first time that anybody had ever said that to me, where it's like, yeah, this is put in place as a protective mechanism for everything else. And so and applying that to indulgences, obviously Jesus died for everybody, but that means that there was obviously a debt that had accrued. So even though there was that ultimate act of love, there was still an aspect of it that was payment, and you can't just ignore that retribution, and just say it's all love, because it's both. It's both of those things. And so when you look at it like that, that makes more sense to me. But then for me to like have to participate in it, it's like I don't really want to. You know what I mean? Well, it's like you win 565 days, and it's like, wait,
they don't use days anymore.
I know.
That's
stopped.
That's old school. But there's a reality TV show called The Biggest Loser. Have you ever seen it?
I have. It's so unethical. Don't watch that show, man.
Okay. I will continue to watch unethical reality TV because I like it. The basic idea is gamifying everything. Everything's gamified, okay? And even for your app on your phone, you can get everything gamified. Your health, your diet, your exercise regimen, your spiritual life. And you get little rewards and points and like all these achievements. And you can do that, and it's just baby steps, right? And the person that likes that structure and those little rewards and they add up and and it just keeps them going. It's like Facebook. Like, why do people like getting these internet points? Like, oh, how many likes did you get? Oh, I got this many likes. Wow. People like gamifying life. And there's, it's possible to abuse this gamification, obviously, in every domain. But there's also that idea that some people might be at the stage where they need to get little feedbacks like that encourage them and that keep them from backsliding. And then once they're a little bit more mature and a little bit stronger and a little bit more convinced to do the good thing for goodness sake rather than for these fake internet points or whatever it is, then they can stand on their own 2 feet eventually and start walking and then running and eventually fly to the heights of heaven, right?
Well, and the cool thing about the Catholic faith is that it gives you this so much working room in everything, and so there's a lot of yes and, which is funny to me. It's like yes and there's so much stuff there. So I love the Orthodox faith when they talk about the church as a hospital for the soul. I think that's just such a beautiful way to speak about um, the church. And I wish we as Catholics would do that, and we could. And of course, we go there and we pay our debts in one sense. We get to participate in the Mass. But if I've experienced anything in the last couple of years from my faith, it is this slow but constant healing. This peace that I can't explain, that exists outside of all of these other things. And if we spoke about it more often in those terms, I think other people would start, well, maybe they would start looking towards it and saying, oh, look, that seems to have made him happy. That seems to have brought him some kind of peace. I wonder what that's all about.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, this is the goal, is to be an inspiration to others around us by being a living example of peace and joy, right, in Christ. Another aspect of this that I want to touch on is superstition, sort of as a parallel thought experiment. When I'm at church, there's one church I like to go to, and it's mainly East Asians, Hindus, Sikhs, lining up to kiss the feet of this life-sized statue of Jesus Christ crucified
Uh-huh.
up by the altar. And many of these people may not be Catholic. God only knows. But there is part of me that says, okay, I can't be superstitious, so I need to be aware. And it seems like a mixed bag of people that are lining up to kiss this statue, and God only knows what weird demonic rites they're invoking when they kiss the statue. But then I catch myself and I say, look, so superstition is forbidden by the church. Okay, check. So that makes me feel better. I'm not responsible for the superstition of any other human. Okay, check. That's another weight off my mind. And I myself am not inclined to be superstitious with this statue. I know it's just a representation of my Lord and Savior, and it's just a block of material made to remind me of Jesus Christ. So check. All the weight is lifted off me. I don't need to worry about anyone else's superstition. And
Right.
I am forbidden to be superstitious, and I'm not inclined to be superstitious with this statue when I kiss the feet of this statue. So
Do
then I'm
you?
free to just enjoy the proximity that I feel because of this physical act of going up, getting in line with all these people and kissing the feet of Jesus. And it's very liberating, and it's not tinged with any sort of scrupulosity or any sort of paranoia that I might be doing something superstitious, even though if a non-Catholic Christian were in the room, I'm sure that they would accuse me of superstition. So I think it's the same thing
Yes.
with indulgences. We need to have that freedom of mind that Mother Church gives us. It's forbidden to be superstitious. It's forbidden to abuse indulgences. So just use them for what they are meant to be, and liberate yourself, and know that religion is very, very, very simple. God is all good and deserving of all your love, and we are physical and spiritual creatures, and there are physical manifestations of our love for God, right?
Yeah. So you don't like a piece of you doesn't care that it might be perceived by others as superstitious.
Well, I mean, I'm in a Catholic church, and I'm lining up with a bunch of other people to do what I consider to be a very Catholic devotion.
Hmm.
And it's not explicitly condemned by the church. It's encouraged by the church to have images, to revere images. And so, no, I'm not worried about someone misunderstanding the Catholic faith. If I were worried, if that weighed on me, then I would be crushed by now, because most people do misunderstand what Catholicism is all about. So that weight could crush a man, no?
Yeah. Yeah. And part of me just needs to be like a man about it. I'm just not worried
Mm,
about it. I never understood when people would accuse Catholics of worshiping statues.
mm,
That always confounded me.
mm.
Like, yeah, you worship statues, and it's like I don't. I, I mean, I mean, No, I mean, kneeling and making the sign of the cross is definitely not a form of worship. So, uh, kissing the feet of a statue doesn't bother me either. That's something I kiss my cross all the time. So,
So, do you think it's an apt parallel to the indulgences, the sort of
yeah,
perspective?
yeah, absolutely. And it's probably better than my method of just staying away from it. You look at it as a gift, and you look at it as an area where a freedom. I don't have to worry. I'm not treating this like it's an area of superstition, or I'm not, um, you know, I, I'm not using it in an inappropriate manner. That is, I'm just afraid that I would use it in an inappropriate manner. I'm afraid I'd get caught up in it, and I would be too, I would basically just Jenga myself, where I would just like line everything up, and then one day would just topple down because I um, went too far overboard with it. You know,
What
it's kind
about,
of.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, no, I was just gonna say it's kind of like giving me access to a cookie jar.
Ah.
And you're like, here, you can have some cookies, and I'm like, yeah, that's really nice. And then I'm 300 pounds.
Wow, those are some big cookies.
I mean, you just got to be persistent, David. You just
I'm the same when it comes to indulging, but I want to talk about something really silly, some really silly prayers. For example, I'm not a sports fan, but some sports fans say, "I pray to God that my team wins this Saturday or this Sunday, whatever it is, football or soccer or whatever."
Do they
The
really?
the other silly prayer is, "Oh, I hope I find a parking spot." So, I personally don't see any problem with those silly, childish prayers, provided that everything is in its proper perspective, meaning that, oh God, let me find a good parking spot, but not my will be done, your will be done. You know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely. Um, I'm a little less likely to agree with you on the sports. No, I think any prayer is beautiful. I think anytime you talk to God, but if that's the only time that you're talking to God, then there's a real problem there. Um, uh, but yeah, anytime that you want to lift your heart up to the Lord, I mean, that's excellent. I thank God all the time when there's a parking space. Um, and in our parking garage, somebody pulls out and I'm pulling up. I'm like, yeah. Yeah, I think those are great. Silly. I don't even think they're silly. I just think they're just the little moments in life when you talk to God and you hope that your will aligns with His.
Yeah, it's not that hard. Prayer is really not that hard. Is there a possibility that we Catholics have been brainwashed into thinking that we Catholics are a bunch of superstitious morons? And in fact, no one prays for their football team to win. It's just a propaganda, sort of a black legend. Or do you think there are innocent, low IQ people that exclusively pray for sports and parking?
Oh, definitely. I mean that you're going to have that anywhere. I mean, nominal Christians exist in all denominations, and they'll pray for those little things and just hope that God gives them a bicycle, and that's about it. That's the extent of it. Um, do I mean that's kind of like the Jewish person being afraid to like give it too small of a tip. I don't know if that's occurred because I don't I I don't think I overcompensate like in a superstitious manner. Um, I do, but it's funny. I'll reveal this live. My dad and I talk about this because you got to drop a deuce. You're gonna read a book, right? So like, is religious reading material allowed while you're dropping a deuce? Like,
Yes.
is that like an okay thing?
I don't read on the toilet because I think it's unhygienic. Like, I mean, I just want to like keep books uncontaminated, even by the general atmosphere of a bathroom. You know what I mean? I would never put a book in a bathroom, no matter what. I treat books as sacred objects, even if it's an Archie comic. But I can't even fold a page on a book because I just want to keep them nice and pristine. But if you're comfortable with having E. coli and fecal matter on your books, then go for it. I mean, uh,
David.
there's nothing wrong with mixing. I pray on the toilet.
Uh-huh.
Number one, number two, it doesn't matter. I pray, and by the way, I sit to do number one or number two. because I live with
Me
a
too. My
woman.
wife's weirded out by it. She's like, "Why? You know?" I'm like, "Yeah. I mean, you can read. You know, like you can get a lot done here."
Yeah. But I do it more just so I don't have to go through that whole thing. Oh, why is the seat up or whatever? Well, the seat's never up in my house. You know what I mean?
Again, I'm going to point out the low caliber content that we have in this. It immediately goes down to just like do you drop a deuce and read religious material? But I will also point out, David, you know, there's like MRSA on every doorknob ever, right?
What does
Like
that mean?
it's MRSA. It's a type of super infection that like people can get it. It sits on your skin, but if it gets into a wound, it's just untreatable because it's resistant to antibiotics.
Oh.
And yeah, I mean it's treatable, but it's harder to treat than other antibiotics. You have to be more aggressive with it. And so I think about my nursing shoes all the time, which are sitting in my hallway. You know,
Mm.
literally just blood, poop, pee, and MRSA. That's all I can imagine being on my shoes. The surgeons I work for find pieces of bones in their what do you call them? The spongy shoes that are really awful looking that everybody wears. Crocs. They find pieces of bone in their Crocs.
I'm just laughing because Ave Christus Rex said, pretty sure there are ways to read without getting fecal matter on the book.
There are most definitely ways to read without getting fecal matter on the book. You
Yeah.
just it's terrible. You use your foot. You got to use your foot to lift up the toilet seat is what you do, and then you can read. Then you have full access.
Oh,
Turning a book with one hand or a page with one hand is just not possible.
so you're swiping left, swiping right. You've got different kinds of swiping going on. If you're on a
Yeah,
Kindle
basically.
device or whatever.
Yeah, and then you always chance dropping the book into your lap. So it's just,
Oh,
you know, you always have to use the foot to lift the toilet seat up so you can use both hands for the reading material.
my wife says she discovered a joke online that men sit on the toilet and say, I'm going to take a dump. And then they
Mm-hmm.
just wait till it happens. But women wait till they have to take it up and then they just sit and they just do it. Is that true?
No, not even close. I
Okay.
mean, I when I go, I'm ready. I will say this: I sit longer than I have to because if I'm reading some compelling piece of material, then I want to see that through to the end of the chapter, you know. In which case, I get my wife's in the next room. She's like, "What are you doing in there?" And I'm like, "Reading." Like, come on, isn't it obvious? Like, come like for real.
Interesting. So we've hit new lows on the podcast, but it's all good. It's
I'm
all,
glad to have taken you there.
yeah, it's all, some of my best prayers are during bathroom breaks.
Excellent.
I find it humbling because I picture myself as a turd and, you know,
It's very
basically
Martin
this,
Luther-y of you.
yeah, but a turd that will not be covered over with snow, a turd that is going to be sanctified, truly sanctified. This is the beauty of the Catholic way. And
Right.
I mean, it's silly to think that we are pure and that we're righteous. And one of my favorite quotes in the Old Testament is that our righteousness is just like filthy rags. I often think about that. And we all have a long way to go, and we're all very, very disgusting and dirty. I think about hygiene a lot. Like every time I'm in the shower, I shower,
Mm-hmm.
you know, once a day, sometimes twice a day, just because I stink, I get sweaty, I have to brush my teeth, I have to clean my hair. I've got to keep everything clean because if I don't keep it clean, guess what happens?
Yeah.
It's a gross, stinky mess, right?
Sure.
So it accumulates very quickly, and I think this is very humbling for us humans. And I can understand why Satan and his demons mock and ridicule us disgusting, smelly creatures. I do understand, but he completely missed the point that God is humble and God humbles his creatures. And we have fallen from grace, but he has given us a chance to stand before him purified and clean. And I take exception with Luther's vision of the dunghill covered with snow. It really, really, really aggravates me among many of his heterodox teachings. Really aggravating.
That's he was like he was the original Christian troll. He was. But what do you think of this? So I read Saint Anthony of the Desert a month or two ago, and it was brilliant. I'm going to reread it again because it's so good. It's only like 100 pages. But they said that by the end of the saint's life, he didn't bathe at all, and he always kept his burlap sack on or whatever it was, but that he just didn't have to bathe. Now, he was also like stupid holy. So do you think that there is a correlation, or do you just think he was a smelly monk?
Well, I mean, anything is possible with God, but I know that the odor of sanctity is a real thing.
I know,
And
dude.
I pray every day to die in the odor of sanctity and go straight to heaven without need of purgatory. I pray for that every day because purgatory is painful and long. And the reason I want the odor of sanctity is because why not? I mean, if I could die in the odor of sanctity, that would be good for those around me to say, wow, what is this? Like, David usually stinks. Why does he smell good today on his at the moment of death, you know? It's a supernatural sign to those around me at my death that God is good. And the fact that I'm praying for this and asking for this every day is kind of like icing on the cake. Like, frankly,
Right.
I'd be happy just to be the last one out of purgatory, but I don't settle for that. I say I don't want to go to purgatory at all, even though I deserve hell. I don't even want to go to purgatory. I want to go straight to heaven. I want to have the odor of sanctity when I die. I want to live a long and holy life. I want to be an example to others. I want to be a saint. And I don't want anything less than that. And I encourage everyone, no matter how small you are, how low you are on the totem pole today, if you're a Christian, I want you to follow my example and strive for the heights of virtue and sanctity, because that's the place to be. And just saying, well, I'm just a little nobody and I'll just be happy if I make it into purgatory, that's a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. I stress this often with my guests, especially my
Right.
Catholic guests.
No, and I agree. I definitely agree with you on that. You always have to be striving for something more than what you think you're able to attain. And a lot of the times you surprise yourself too. And the only reason I understand that methodology is because of working out, of exercise and fitness, and I understand that if you want to hit a certain level, you always have to shoot past a certain reign of where you want to take yourself, and you'll probably land where you want to go and not where you're shooting, but you'll still hit a good area. And you have to be constantly thinking in that progressive mindset, or you're just gonna plateau, and once you plateau, you go backwards. There's no real, like, plateauing in that sense is just regression. And so, but did Kieran tell you this? This is weird because Kieran and I were just talking about this last night. We're pretty sure our grandmother died with the odor of sanctity. It occurred to me a couple years ago when I was smelling a candle, and it was a rose candle. And I'm like, oh, that smells like Nennen. And whenever you go into her room, there's this floral scent still in the room,
Wow.
and it's like this light, cool feeling in the room that people would say, oh, it feels like it's a cool couple degrees colder than the rest of the house, but it's comfortable, it's nice, and there's this stillness there.
Wow.
It's far out, man. We were really fortunate to have a true saint in our family.
Wow. That sounds amazing.
Yeah,
So
dude.
she was a practicing Catholic her whole life, I would imagine.
Yep, her whole life.
What was her
Yeah,
ethnic background?
English, whitey,
English
Caucasian.
Rose. English Rose.
Yeah, dude.
Wow.
And she was cool. She gave me my love of the Blessed Mother and Padre Pio, and she prayed for the entire family.
Mm.
Um, it's funny because I found all this work that I'm doing now in my prayer life has been um, modeled after my grandmother. And her approach to things, because I just really identify with her. She had this real gift for service of others. And I went to my Uncle Mark's house and I visited with him and our friend. His name's Mike Todd. Mike Todd he's an interesting guy. He's a Christian dude, raised in a Catholic family, but he's not a Catholic anymore. But he's just very much into yoga and Kundalini, but he's just an interesting guy. So we, got together to chat, and I went through my Uncle Mark's bookshelf and I found The Imitation of Mary. Um, and which is not it's not it's not the true companion piece to the Imitation of Jesus or of Christ, but it's the one that was made in the 1700s by this French Jesuit. And I stole it, and I said, Mark, can I borrow this? And he said, yeah. And when I opened it, I found just a massive amount of like religious cards in it, and like these things. And this one card that I found just said, "To live in the hearts that we leave behind is not to die." And then I found this laminated prayer that my grandmother had. She made a bookmark out of it, and it's a prayer about uh, bringing all of her children back to the Catholic faith. And it specifically appealed to Mary. It specifically appealed to the angels. And it was just really cool to see this, to get this more in-depth look at what my grandmother's prayer life was geared towards. But even weirder were some of the religious cards that were in there. There was a Padre Pio religious card, and there was a Saint Teresa of Lisieux. Yeah. And which is funny though, because I base a big portion of my spirituality off of her. And there were some other things in there, and I was like, oh, this is funny how this all kind of fits together. But my grandmother had this, I guess, secret mission to just be silent and to pray for everybody around her, and to pray for them to all come back to the church. And my dad and my uncle Mark came back first, and then I guess I was the next one years and years later. But the week before she died, I went to mass with her, and she couldn't go up to the choir. And my dad said, Aidan will sit with you. I think I probably told you the story, but I'm going to tell you again. And I sat with her, and since that moment occurred, I have this strong sense that she gave me over to the Lord and put me under the special protection of Padre Pio, and brought me back to the church through these different avenues. And I came back to the church almost 10 years to the day that moment happened. It was 2017 that I decided that I was going to, dedicate my life to praying the rosary every day, and go to adult catechism classes. And it all kind of snowballed.
Very powerful. I think we underestimate the quote unquote little old ladies at church who are constantly there praying for a fallen away husband, a fallen away son or daughter, or both. So many anonymous, silent, for lack of a better word, little old ladies who, they might be Portuguese, they might be Italian, they might be English, they might be French, they might be whatever, but they're overlooked. I think they're overlooked on the city bus. They're overlooked as they shuffle along the street and maybe hesitate to cross a busy street. They're overlooked, in the institutions where some of them have been shoved away by their families, and they're overlooked sometimes even by their loved ones, even maybe overlooked by a husband, right?
Right.
But they are warriors, and they have that manliness that you and I are craving, that manliness to fight the good fight, to be steadfast in our faith, in our imitation of Christ, and in our faith, hope, and love, so that we can have the courage to believe that it is possible to not give in to nihilism ultimately, which is the ultimate temptation, to just say, you know what, it's too hard, it's an uphill battle, the odds are against us, and is this even real? Is Christianity even real? Is the good objective and eternal and absolute, or are the hordes of people that are screaming in my face around me all day, every day, correct, in as much as eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die, and there's nothing. I mean, I'm not tempted by that nihilism. I'm not, but there are many people, I think, who are, and it's a constant uphill battle for those of us who have the gift of faith, and that's why I admire these little old ladies as one example. They're young men also that do the same thing, but the little old ladies paint a really poignant picture for us of faith in the face of indifference, in the face of hostility, in the face sometimes even of abuse. And it's mind-boggling. And I see in that old woman at church, whether it's your grandmother or some other anonymous woman that I see at church, I see the humility of God. That's what I see. I see the humility of God in that, the silence that you talked about, that quiet confidence that you talked about, the persistence and the prayer, and just the power of faith, the power of prayer. But there's one other thing I want to say, which is about, sometimes I hesitate to get in the shower, especially if it's freezing cold. In the weather outside, and my house is poorly insulated, and I hesitate to get into the shower. And then I say, okay, I better do it. And so I get in the shower, and the water's warm and refreshing, and I feel clean, and I'm like, oh, I want to stay in the shower. So when I was outside, I didn't want to get in, but once I'm in, I don't want to get out. And the analogy I'm painting here is with the faith. If we have slacked off, and if we've neglected the little spark or flame of faith that we have been given, and we say, okay, well, just do what I want to do, and I'll live like a normal secular person, it's hard to go to Mass. It's hard to frequent the sacraments or to pray daily. But once you start, you're like, hey, this is fun. This is good. This is amazing. I'm on fire for the faith, blah, 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 blah. Why did I resist? Why did I wait so long? As St. Augustine said, late have I loved you, O Lord. And then life happens, complicated stuff happens. You get thrown off balance, and you find yourself living a tepid lifestyle. You fall away from your prayers. You fall away from the sacraments. And you're right back where you started. It's always this sort of two sides of the fence. And the reason I'm emphasizing this in the context of a discussion about these little old ladies is because of their persistence, their tenacity, and how important it is for us to recognize that, yes, it can feel good to be on one side. It can feel superficially good to be on the other side. But you and I have tasted the faith, and we know that it's worth fighting for. It's worth cherishing that faith, protecting that faith, and always constantly upbuilding that faith, so that we never, ever, ever, ever again fall away from the faith. So that's the end of my little speech there.
It's well, it's funny, that constancy, I think, is built from understanding that extremes are no good in either way. So I get really worried now if I'm really excited about something, or if I'm really doom and gloom about something. And I realize that even if I'm excited, if I find that my soul is easily stirred with something, I now become very cautious about whatever that is, because I realize that constancy is built in remaining still, regardless of of the external circumstances that are occurring around me. And I break it all the time because I'm so easily agitated. But even just spending small amounts of time in silence has really showed me that that it does not take much to stir me up and to lift me into another direction. I'm like a plate of Velcro that's just exposed to everything. And if anything even remotely catches on, it's completely latched and I'm stuck there. And I think that's the beauty of those little old ladies, is that they have that constancy down. They have that quiet stillness. My grandmother had that. And there's this acceptance that springs forth for other people, because you can see how easy it is to let yourself be stirred up by everything. Was an active alcoholic. He crashed one of his cars.
Who was
and
this?
then my Uncle Mark.
Oh, okay.
And he pulled up to the house, and my Nenan opened the door, and she's like, "Oh, Mark, what happened?" And he said, "Oh, I got drunk and I wrapped it around a pole." And she was like, "Oh, come in for tea." And it wasn't this like permissive or dismissive comment. It was just, well, we'll deal with that later. And it was just like, come on in and let's get sustenance. Let's get you taken care of, and then we can get to the core of this. I hope that's what it was. I hope it was as healthy as how I'm presenting it. It could just be gross negligence, and
No.
and his very destructive behavior could have been enabled for years longer. But
No. I pictured Yoda when you said that. I pictured Yoda.
My grandmother was like Yoda, a little taller, but had the same kind of attitude that everybody just wanted to be around her, and they didn't know why they wanted to be around her. They just did, and it was such a beautiful gift, and um, I'm still enamored by it. I still think about her and think, I wish my wife could have met her. I wish that everybody could meet her because she lived her life in this very graceful manner that was subservient to everybody around her.
Wow, amazing! The inspiration we have. Easy to take it for granted, but we have to look out for those examples and follow those examples. And I mean, in
Absolutely.
my mind, in the back of my mind, I'm just thinking, okay, when I'm older, then I'll imitate her. Right now, I'll just be an obnoxious, smug ass.
I don't see that. I know. It's funny. I was thinking. I get very irritated by a lot of Catholic media content because it's so smug. So there's a lot of stuff out there, and it's not even conducive to like healthy spirituality. It's just the latest stuff. Um, and like let's talk about Pope Francis' latest mishap, or let's talk about the German synod that's going on, and all of this heresy. And it's like this isn't serving me at all. And all of these people that operate in this domain, they're not helping my spirituality. But that's in direct contrast to your show. When you have people on, you actively listen to people and you let them speak. You respond, obviously, but it's a very different kind of atmosphere than what I'm used to seeing in the Catholic world. So thank you for not being a douchebag.
That's one of the labels I get, but thank you very much. I appreciate the feedback, and I do, I do acknowledge that there are some strengths to my approach, just because of the character that I've inherited and the graces of God, that I'm able to have a genuine love of people. I'm not faking it. I really do love people. I'm interested in people. I can't take any credit for anything in life, obviously, but I have this character where I do love and respect all human beings. So I thank God for that. And I'm very inappropriate and socially awkward, which is maybe might be entertaining sometimes, might turn some people off. I don't know, but I don't try to filter it too much. I do try to control some of my when I'm off camera, I make a lot more stupid jokes. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, me
And
too. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but
I mean, it's easy when nobody's looking at you but your wife.
yeah.
So
Do you sing in the shower?
no, man, I'm not a guy that sings in the shower. My neighbor sings in the shower quite loudly,
I
but
was gonna ask, how do you know? But I guess it's obvious.
no, it's right through the walls, bro. And we talk about it too. I'm like, so Adam, heard you earlier. He's like, yeah, it's quite loud. So
I
he
don't
probably.
sing. I don't sing in the shower either. I was just curious if you do.
I was gonna say, now, are you prompting me because you're going to reveal something about yourself, or is
No,
this you don't sing in the shower?
no, no. I pray in the shower
Yeah, me too. Me too. But I also feel
silently.
like that's unproductive. I see
Silently.
my silently. I whisper, but every time I get in the shower, like the shower curtains blow out and then they stick to my body, and so I'm praying, but then I'm like getting
Oh,
irritated at the shower curtains that are stuck to my bare
oh,
skin, and that wet plastic is just the worst.
oh,
So
oh.
yeah,
MRSA.
just somehow we just took it down. Don't look up MRSA. Don't look up any like hospital acquired infection.
No,
Don't
no,
don't work in the healthcare field, by
no,
the way, because it's just
no.
literally it's just a fountain of poop. It's just
Oh.
it's you
Heavy,
know
heavy stuff. But yeah, we need to keep ourselves away from all the toxic stuff in the Catholic media and in the shower and everywhere. I mean, it's literally everywhere. Like we were talking earlier about images of attractive women in on TV and on billboards and walking down the street, and just the culture at large wants to present you with pleasure, like even if it's a billboard of a big fake juicy burger. I mean, that's
Right.
still to me, it's the same thing. Like, I mean, if I see a big juicy burger ad, or if I see a big, juicy pair of Hooters hanging out of some girl's top on a billboard, it's the same thing for me.
It's the
It's just temptation.
terminology is what makes it foul. You could just say breasts, that works the same.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
No, no. I'm just busting your out, man.
But we're being tempted by all the good stuff, pleasure, and
Right.
reading the Desert Fathers is making me aware that, and I've been saying this for months now, I'm 35% into the book, the Philokalia, and I
Oh yeah.
highly recommend it. And on that note, I'm very excited about your podcast. Can you talk a little bit about the timeline? When is it coming out? Is there one episode that's been published yet or not?
No, there hasn't been. So we probably won't punish. We probably won't. Yeah, we won't punish you with this. We won't publish it until we can edit the music in and do a little bit of the artwork for it. So I commissioned my dad to do the art for it. My dad's actually quite good at stuff. So we're gonna do that, but we made a couple of attempts at recording an episode, and every time that we did it, I was very I wasn't on my A game, because he would call me up and be like, "We got to do this," and I'd be downstairs and I'd be like, "Okay, I guess I gotta do this." But I'm reading. I'm finishing another spiritual piece of material right now that I don't feel like I can do anything justice if I'm trying to process too much stuff at one time. So I want to get myself on a schedule with the latter whenever I finish The Imitation of Mary, which is actually, it's coming up. I read like a section out of this book every day. And so I probably have until the end of April or the beginning of May until I really get to start the latter. So that's when I would say Kieran's always more ambitious than me and is like, we're going to start it Tuesday. And then it just doesn't occur. But I would say probably closer towards May is when we were really going to make the attempt.
If he started without you, would that kill your whole buzz?
I don't think he would start without me. I just don't foresee that being a thing. If he did, sure, he could do that, but I don't know if that's his desire. Did you talk to him about that? Did he say he wants to start it out without?
Yeah, he said he can't stand you and you're such a slacker, and he's better looking than you and he's better at basketball than you, and so on and so forth.
He's definitely better at basketball, but he's not the better looking brother, let me tell you. I've got 2 inches on him.
Oh, don't go there.
What?
Okay,
what?
height. Okay, height. Okay.
Oh.
So, I was just kidding, by the way. He's not talking to me about you. He's not talking to me.
No, I wouldn't take any offense if you wanted to start it, but I feel like that'd be awkward to have like a solo podcast. I always wonder how you do your meta episodes. Do you like write your stuff out first, or do you just like riff?
Riff.
That's hard. I would get myself into so much trouble if I did something like that.
Yeah, but my meta episodes are edited, so I say a bunch of stupid stuff and cut it all out. That's why I haven't done a meta episode since 2020 began, because I'm just going live all the time.
Right.
But I am surprised that I'm able to not really mess up and stick my foot in my mouth, but it's going pretty well. Like, I haven't made a complete fool of myself. I have misspoken many, many times, but it's usually just little sort of typographical errors, or the equivalent of that when you're speaking and you just misspeak.
Sure.
That's not a big deal. It's pretty forgivable. But and just getting facts wrong, but that's pretty understandable too. And there's the internet. If people want to fact check, it's pretty easy.
Yeah.
So it's not a big deal. But what I'm concerned about is saying something personal about people that don't want to have anything to do with Catholicism or, my project.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that could happen. We could take pot shots at Kieran right now if you wanted to. That'd be a good start. You could then, break that seal. Nobody likes you, Kieran.
We all like him. We all love him.
I know. He's great. He's cute.
What would the format? How do you anticipate the format? Is it going to be a reading and a back and forth discussion, or no readings, just the commentary and the back and forth sort of review of how it struck you and how it struck him? And are there practical takeaways for the listener? Like, little homework assignments, or how do you envision podcasts going?
So I wouldn't say that there would be any kind of homeworky type of assignments, and I'm still figuring it out myself too, because some of the steps are really short and some are really long. And so I don't know how we're gonna break up the long ones, because like if you give an episode to a short one and then you give an episode to
Mm.
one that's like 20 pages long, it doesn't have the same kind of effect. And so I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to review the material and see how it plays out in that sense. Um, but I've noticed that like what you're doing, there's not a lot of this. There's not a lot of dudes that I can talk to that are my age, that experience the same kind of things and that are talking about this stuff and trying to live this life. And so this is more just a couple of guys who are pursuing the interior life and pursuing extra biblical reading material, and then trying to live it authentically, and then maybe initial impressions, and if one of us is more struck by a step than the other, what struck us. But I'm also wondering how I'm going to do it, and speak about it in an authentic way, but also in a way that's not um, I don't know. Whenever you pursue things in the spiritual life, you're supposed to keep it hidden. You're supposed to keep it veiled, and you're not supposed to suffer along with other people, in a certain sense, because it takes away any of the merit that goes along with it. So
Mm.
I'm still kind of um, sitting with that concept and wondering how we're going to handle it. But I'm going to try as hard as possible not to be too inside, jokey about it, and try to just be as authentic as possible as we process um, a beautiful piece of work.
Yeah.
Um,
The
but I
way the way I see it personally, the reason I'm comfortable exposing my perspective on Catholicism to YouTube and the world, it's not because I think I'm a good example of how to be a Catholic, but it's because I think that Christ gave us a church and He wants everyone to get in. So it's just a little sample of one perspective among many, many, many other perspectives on the internet of
Right.
Catholics who say, "Wow, I'm excited! I'm excited to have been invited into the Ark. I got into the Ark of my own free will, and I think it was a reasonable decision to get into the Ark. I'm happy to have gotten into the Ark. These are the riches that I have at my disposal because I freely and rationally entered the Ark. And if anything that I'm excited about excites you, latch onto that. Latch onto that excitement. Get
Yep.
into the Ark, stay in the Ark, and help others into the Ark. That's about it. That's my philosophy with the podcast. It doesn't matter if you think I'm stupid or ugly, or if my perspective is at odds with your own. If there's anything that you're excited about from the Catholic Church, then just latch onto that and dig deeper into it and dig around and find what other treasures there are. That's about it from my perspective.
And that's kind of what we're going for, where it's just like we're making this attempt, and if you are one of those people that is also in that same boat, then you have something that you can grasp onto and participate with. And I don't know how we would have other people participate with us, but I would love to encourage active participation and discussion about it, because um, we have access to so many of these spiritual manuals. And um, I have a great spiritual director, but spiritual directors are pretty much few and far between,
Mm.
is what I'm hearing. Unless, of course, you're an Orthodox, in which case it's very common fare to have a spiritual father. Um, uh, so the idea of making it normal, in a sense, approaching with a sense of normalcy, like, hey, we're doing this, and you know, we'd love it if you wanted to participate in one way or another.
Well, hopefully Robert White will give you lots of interesting comments on your YouTube channel.
Does he still pop up?
Yeah, 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 yeah. He's been there for a couple of years now. Well, maybe a year and a half. I'm not sure,
Did he
but
comment on this one yet?
no, not yet. No,
That's
but
unfortunate.
But that's a thing. Like you will have your listeners that are trying to get as much as they can out of the Catholic perspective and the Orthodox perspective and just
Right.
The Christian perspective generally, and then you'll have those who are monotheists, and then you'll have those who worship God in a way that is not monotheistic. I think that's a little bit of a contradiction, but there's some confusion about God, and different people with different worldviews and different religions can still get excited about Christianity, and they can still
Right.
derive some usefulness from listening to you and your brother talk about the ladder of divine ascent. And then there are the atheists that hate religion and God and Christianity, and they
Yeah.
they will contribute in their own way too. This is the
Sure.
beautiful thing about the economy of salvation. God has left no one out. Everyone has business on the stage of life. Everyone has a lot of business, and everyone's helping God. That's the beautiful thing. Everyone's helping God's will be done ultimately. Even Satan and his demons and his human minions here on earth, they're helping God's will to be done. It's amazing. And once you see life as a sort of theater piece like that, that the victory of God is a foregone conclusion. It's a fait accompli on the cross. Satan has lost, God has won. I mean, that's no great revelation. Everyone, if you know who and what God is and who and what Satan is, you already know who's going to win this so-called battle. But
Right.
given the fact that the church emphatically teaches that the battle and the war itself have been definitively won on the cross, we can just sort of kick back and watch the drama unfold and watch shifting alliances. And because I was a Satanist and I was on Satan's side for a little while, a few years, I know that it's not a great leap from Satanism to Catholicism. It's not a great leap from nihilism to monotheism. It really is not a big lifestyle change. It's not. It's something that everyone can do at their own pace, and I don't feel like I've really advanced as a human being that much from when I was at my deepest, darkest moments. I mean, uh, it's just not a lot of growth. There's not a really huge difference, but it's a significant difference because now I'm on Christ's side. Now I've signed up to be purified. Now I've signed up to say yes to suffering and to death in Christ so that I can enjoy eternal life with him. But it's not like I'm being tested too much. It's not like I'm being crucified every day.
Right.
The little crosses that I get every day are so small. They're custom made for a really, really, really weak human being because that's what I am. So I want to let the atheists out there know that it's not a big transition. When you jump into monotheism, what I thought is that my personality is going to be destroyed. I'm not going to be able to smile or laugh or have fun or anything. But nothing could be further from the truth. God meets you where you are, and then you start taking little baby steps, and He'll send you little tiny crosses. And if you're lucky, if He really loves you a lot, maybe He'll send you some big ones. But so far, I haven't gotten
That's
any
true.
big ones.
Um, I was watching this documentary last night about Laurel Canyon in California and the
Right.
music that came out of there in the 60s. And the excitement that the musicians spoke about, there was some, it really resonated with me. It made me think of the excitement I get when I think of Jesus and when I think of Mother Mary. And probably that sounds cheesy, but there is this very similar kind of this mystical quality of what's coming up next. And you wouldn't put those things together. This rock and roll scene in California where drugs and sex, are like celebrated and just reveled in, and then spirituality. It's
Mm.
and Russell Brand described his touch with spirituality in the same way, where he said he saw caught the eye of this monk, and he said it made him blush, and he's like, I saw the truth in that moment, and I thought that was just the coolest way of describing it, because I feel something very similar to that whenever I get close to the truth.
Mm. It is the romance of religion, or if you're not ready for religion, it's the romance of spirituality. And if you're not if you're not ready for spirituality, it's the romance of truth itself. I mean, there's always a point of contact where you, in your weakness, you're ready to get excited about some aspect of God and His church. It's just incredible how flexible God is in working with us, bending low to condescend to reach each of us and meet each of us exactly where we are. So
Where we're at.
unbelievable, the humility of God. On that note, we're going to wrap it up. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on, or did you want to leave the final thought for the viewers?
I was just going to say, how many wives out there dislike you? Because my wife, when I told my wife I was chatting with you today, she's like, there goes 6 hours. And,
Oh.
and I was thinking, like, I bet you that's not the first one. I bet, does your wife, does she like wonder where you disappear to for hours at a time while you're doing this stuff?
She's happy to get rid of me, frankly, because she's busy with her own artistic projects.
Cool.
I won't go into detail. If you look behind me here, you can see 2 paintings she made. You can see, you can't see it, Aidan, but you'll see it when you play back. But a couple of icons she made. One of Jesus, the Good Shepherd, holding a cute little sheep. And one of Saint Marmas or something like that. It's an Eastern saint. I'm not sure who that is.
Sounds like you'd spread them on toast.
Marmite. But Mamas, I think it is.
Mamas? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. But no, she's happy to get rid of me, but she hates my religion, obviously. And I don't want to talk too much about her because she doesn't want me to. But yeah, every wife that I know of hates me. And it's just because, Christ brings not peace, but a sword. He comes to divide. And once you're in, then you love Him, you love His church, you love the saints. But when you're on the outside, I think it's only natural to resent that sort of all or nothing approach that Jesus Christ takes. You're with me or you're against me. If you're not with me, you're scattering. I mean, this is a pretty hard line that Jesus Christ takes. So I think it's only natural for those who are opposing Christ, even if they think He's a myth, just a myth, a legend, something that was made up to keep people under the control of a domineering government. Whatever your conspiracy theory is, even if you don't believe in a literal historical Jesus Christ, I think it's normal to have some antagonism toward this figure that is so dramatically polarizing, even in his own teachings. You're with me or you're against me.
Well, I will say my wife is a lover of Christ, and I'll actually say that it's probably my fault that that was her comment that she made, because I should just be a far better husband and better at communicating, and rather than just spring it on her and said her, like, by the way, I'm going to talk to David. I should have said it a couple days prior to that, but also, but you know what though, I'm going to say this though too. She gets treated the worst. So I'm on this pursuit of things, but it's so easy to just be irritable with people that are close to you, and I should treat my wife leagues better than I do. And I feel like that needs to be the path where I die to myself, because all this other stuff, all these pursuits, it doesn't really mean much if you're not loving the people around you better. So,
yeah, she is your mission. She is your primary mission. And you have to focus on...
She is, David.
You have to focus on the realities, your station in life. Someone mentioned that a dog came in and made a cameo. I think that was a cat, no?
It was my cat. Yeah, my cat came in. Yeah, she's sitting right here.
Long hair?
Yeah, she's got long hair. She's cute. Yeah.
Cute.
All right. Well, hey, look, I'll let you go. I got to throw some food in the oven, and I got to go be present and, attempt to be that husband that I should be. So... But
thanks for coming on. Nice seeing you. Nice chatting to you. Sorry it went so long. Give my apologies to the wife.
It was really good. I will.
We'll catch up again sometime, and shoot me an email anytime. But most importantly, please remember me and mine in your daily prayers.
I absolutely will. It was great talking to you.
Nice talking to you. Talk soon.
All right, buddy.
Bye. God bless. Love you. Bye.